Hey guys, and welcome back to Z3 Cubing. Today I'm going to show you the intuitive L4E method on the Pyraminx. Now today I'm going to be teaching you an intermediate Pyraminx method called intuitive L4E. Now this is what's called a V-first method, and I'll explain exactly what that means in just 1 minute. But basically the structure of it is very similar to the basic layer by layer method. I just recently made a tutorial on that method, and so if you don't already know that method very well, then you definitely need to go and watch that video before this one. Now with that basic layer by layer method, you can actually get down to an average of around 5 seconds. Now that's not actually required before learning intuitive L4E. I would recommend getting down to around 8 or 10 seconds before moving on to this video. And in fact, there are a lot of optimizations that you might actually need to get down to 5 seconds using that method that I didn't actually talk about in my beginner's method tutorial, and a lot of that information that you might need to get better at layer by layer is actually contained in this video. So it's actually okay if you only get down to around 8 or 10 seconds first. And also, this is going to be a much more advanced tutorial. I'm going to be going through more difficult concepts much faster and in less detail, and so the most important thing about practicing layer by layer before coming over here is not so much being fast at that method, but more so just gaining experience with the Pyraminx as a whole, just gaining that understanding of how pieces move around and the most efficient way to do things. And so, like I said a minute ago, intuitive L4E is a V-first method, and that means that the first step is going to be getting a V shape on the bottom of the puzzle like this. And so you may notice that this is very similar to the first layer in layer by layer, except we're actually not going to insert that final third edge like that. We're going to leave it so that only these two edges as well as the centers are solved. Now after the V, if we take a look at the remainder of the cube, we can go ahead and count 1, 2, 3, 4 unsolved edge pieces. And that's where we get the name L4E, or last 4 edges. Now in a more advanced L4E method, you just take a look at the cube right here, do an algorithm, and it would solve the cube completely. But this is intuitive L4E, and so the next step for us is actually going to be the easiest step. What we're going to do is take a look at this edge piece right here. We're going to insert it so that it ends up in the back, like this. And so now that one of those last 4 edge pieces is solved, we're down to the last 3 edges, or L3E, and that means we can do the last step, finishing off the cube in one simple algorithm, like this. So the first thing you need to know before you even start to learn intuitive L4E is that on the Pyraminx, color neutrality is essential. So in my beginner layer by layer tutorial, I told you to always start by looking at the yellow center pieces, getting them onto one side like this. But the thing is that yellow is not always the best option. Sometimes it'll be more efficient if you start with, say, green or red. Now you actually can and should practice being color neutral using the basic layer by layer method. So during inspection, look around the puzzle and just look at all your different options. Try out yellow, try out green, try out blue. In this case, I see that green can actually be solved with just one move. So just figure out which one you can do the fastest and then just go from there. Now on 3x3, you might have heard that color neutrality is kind of optional, you don't really have to do it. But on Pyraminx, if you want to be remotely fast, like I said, being color neutral is essential. It might slow you down a little bit to begin with, but in the long run, it'll definitely help a lot. It'll just give you so many more options with every single solve. Nonetheless, I am still going to be doing the example solves for this video on yellow, just to make it a little bit simpler for you guys. Alright, so now actually on to solving the cube. So the first step, like I mentioned, is creating a V like this. So you might say that's really easy. All we have to do is line up the 3 center pieces like this and insert the 2 edges, just like we did in the beginner's method. But that's actually not the most efficient way to do it, like 95% of the time. So I would highly advise against learning intuitive L4E using just basic insertions like the beginner's method. So instead, we have something called block building. Instead of trying to do the 3 centers first and then the 2 edges second, we're going to try and solve all of them at the same time. And so in inspection, we're going to be looking around for things called blocks. And so basically you have an edge solved relative to its center like this. And ideally we'll have 2 blocks, because that means we'll have 2 edge pieces solved by the time that we put the centers together. So right here we have this block. We can use this with either yellow or green. In this case, I'm going to be using it with yellow. And then looking around the cube some more, we also have this other block right here, which also has yellow. Now you're not always going to get quite this lucky, but as soon as you have 2 blocks sharing the same color, yellow in this case, and you have your 3 yellow center pieces here, here, and here, you see that they all converge onto this face. We can go ahead and move them all up, just like this. And now we have our yellow pieces solved, but we also have the 2 edge pieces solved automatically. Now when you're working with blocks, you do have to pay attention to the order in which you're moving the center pieces up to the side they converge on. If you noticed in the example I just showed you, I started off with the centerpiece without a block connected to it, moved that one up here first, and then did this one, then this one. If I instead had done maybe this one before this one, I would have been messing up one of the blocks while moving this one up. Also, if I hadn't started by moving the centerpiece up that doesn't have a block first, if I had, say, done this one first, and then this one, and then this one, I would have also been messing up this piece right here. Now you could actually avoid this by doing a move like this, then moving it up, then moving it back, but that was way more moves. So you kind of just have to look around, see what order to do it in most efficiently in the fewest moves. So of course, you won't always have 2 pre-made blocks of the same color all ready to insert right off the bat. A lot of the times you only have 1 or maybe even 0 blocks around the entire puzzle, as you can see right here. And so what you have to do instead is actually make some blocks along the way. And so while you're solving the center pieces, getting them all onto one side, you're also making blocks, connecting edge pieces to center pieces all at the same time. Now what I would recommend you do just starting out is give yourself a lot of time for inspection, focus on one color to begin begin with, maybe yellow, and then focus on one edge at a time. So focusing on this edge right here, just try out different moves, see if that creates a block by moving that move. Nope, it doesn't. That doesn't make a block. Try this out. Hey, that does actually make a block, and turns out we actually got lucky. It actually made 2 blocks. So basically just start out with one edge, try out doing a bunch of different moves on it during inspection, and just see what happens. If this edge maybe didn't work out, maybe we would try this other yellow edge right here. If that didn't work out, maybe we would start trying green or blue or another color. Anyway, right here we can make these 2 blocks like this, and then we have yellow, yellow, and yellow centers, so we move them onto the bottom. This one goes first because it doesn't have a block connected to it. Now this step is definitely the hardest to get used to when it comes to learning L4E, just because it's so intuitive. Much like solving the cross on a 3x3, it's very easy to do, but very hard to do efficiently. There's just so many hundreds of cases that you couldn't possibly learn them all in one tutorial. So getting good at it just requires tons of experience with tricky cases, perhaps looking at walkthrough solves of faster cubers to point out where you're doing something less efficiently. Keep in mind to consider every piece from every color during inspection, even if it takes you more than 15 seconds to begin with, and do whatever you can to cut down the number of moves. If it seems inefficient, then it probably is. If one move can do 2 separate things, like for example, putting the centerpiece up on the top and also making a block like this, then you probably want to do it. And personally, I like to count up the number of moves that each solution takes me. So for example, 1, 2, 3. If I do it in less than around 5 moves, then I know I got an efficient solution. Now when it comes to the tips on those first 3 centers, once you've come up with a good solution for your V, like the one that I just showed you during inspection, try and just have a quick glance at the tips before you start solving. So for example, our first move's like this, so maybe we'll do this and solve the tip immediately. This one will do the same thing, solve the tip, and this one will also solve the tip at the same time. So you kind of want to solve the tips along with your centers and your edges, get the V all just like this, all at the same time, and from now on, we have our V complete. So we can hold it on the bottom just like this and get on with our last 4 edges. Alright, so the next step is by far the easiest. This is what makes it intuitive L4E instead of just L4E. And basically what we want to do is just solve one edge piece at the back. And so what we want to do is take a look at the edge piece that's inside of the V, like this. We want to take a look at the colors, so we have green and blue. Take a look at that color on the bottom that's blue, and you want to match that with the center color on the front. So you just want to do a U move so that the blue center is on the front, and that matches with the blue edge on the bottom here. And since our other color is green right here, and we have green back here, all we have to do is move it up like this, match it up with the 2 colors, do a U move to put it in the back, and then bring that side back down. Now sometimes when you're doing this step, you'll take a look at your bottom edge. We have red and green. We go ahead and get red in the front, green over on the side. We move it up to the top, over to the back, and back down. And you may have noticed that we accidentally just inserted our last edge, and now we basically have a layer by layer case. This is actually okay, and we can actually solve it just like we would in layer by layer, but I'll be talking a little bit later about how to do it more efficiently. So if you got a simple layer by layer case like that, either right after inserting your back edge, or just directly after solving your V in general, or if you just solved your V and you have a flipped edge like this, then just go ahead and wait till near the end of the video, and I'll show you how to do these cases most efficiently. Alright, now assuming that you've got your V on the bottom and your one edge solved in the back just like normal, we now have 4 different cases with some very easy algorithms to solve the last 3 edges. Alright, so the first thing that we want to identify is which of these 2 edges goes into the bottom slot of the V right here. And so we know that since we started with yellow right here, it'll just be the edge that has yellow on it, so this one right here. For our first case, the yellow is going to be facing away from us like this instead of being in the front. You don't actually need to know that to recognize the case, it's just nice to know. So the key to recognizing what case you actually have is this center piece right here. So you just want to take note of what color it is, in this case red. So for the time being, we can just ignore this edge piece right here that has the yellow, the bottom color on it. And right now we're just looking at this red piece right here. And now we're going to take a look at these other 2 edge pieces and see if either of them match this centerpiece. So neither of them are red. That means we have the first case, which is the easiest. This one's just a basic insert. So what you want to do is, since this piece is on the left, we want to bring up the right side. And then we want to bring the piece over into the slot and back down. And as you can see, we've now solved it. So just once again, if the edge piece with the bottom color, yellow in this case, is over on the left, and if you take a look at this center in the middle here, and none of the other 2 edges match that red color, then the algorithm is R, U prime, R prime. If you have the same thing, but now the edge piece with the yellow on it is over to the right, take note that the center in the front here is still red, and none of these 2 other edge pieces are red, then the algorithm is L prime, U, L. Alright, now on to our second case. For this one, if you take a look at the edge that has yellow on it, which is still our bottom color, the yellow will be facing towards us instead of away from us like it was on the last one. So the yellow is now facing towards us, and once again, if we take a look at the top centerpiece in the front here, it is now blue. And if we take a look at the other 2 edges, we can see that the top one is blue, but the bottom one is not blue. So if the top one is blue like this, we have the edge piece facing towards us. We now bring this yellow edge piece down into the bottom layer, right where it needs to go. And then we bring the opposite layer down kind of in the same way. So we went down, down, and then we kind of do the reverse. So we do up, up. That's called a sledgehammer because you go down, down, up, up. So one more time, if the edge piece that needs to go into the bottom is on the left, and if you take a look at this front centerpiece right here, it matches with the top one, but not with the bottom one here, then we do L, R prime, L prime, R. Alternately, if we have the same case but the yellow edge is now on the right, we take a look at the front centerpiece right here. It is blue, matches with the blue right next to it, but not down in the slot right here. We bring this edge down with an R prime, L, R, L prime. Alright, so now for our third case, we still have our yellow edge with yellow facing us like this. But now if we take a look at the center in the front here, it is still blue. But if we take a look at the two other edges, now we don't have blue on the top, but we do have blue on the bottom. So in this case, what you want to do is actually move this edge piece with yellow on it into the back. And then the side that it was on, you want to move that side upwards. And then you want to move that edge piece into the slot, and then move the slot back down. So once again, when the edge with the bottom color, yellow, is on the left, and the front color, blue, matches with the bottom, but not the side right here, you do U, L prime, U prime, L. And that's kind of like a sledgehammer from the side. And alternately, if this yellow edge is on the right, yellow is still facing us, and our front color blue matches with the blue on the bottom, but not the blue on the side here, then we do U prime, R, U, R prime. Now finally, this is our fourth and most annoying case. The yellow on the yellow edge will now be facing away from us like this. And if we take a look at our front color, which is now red, we now have matching red and red on both sides. So it starts off with kind of a sledgehammer. So we start off by breaking up the block. So you have red and red here. You break that up, go down, down, up, up. In that up move you just did, you continue that on and you actually do a double move. And then you bring the top over like this, and back down. Now that intuitive explanation in this case was actually pretty confusing, so it's easier if you just take a look at the algorithms. So if we have our yellow edge over on the left here, and we have red matching red and red, then we do R prime, L, R, L2 prime, U, L. Alternatively, if our yellow edge is on the right, and our front color red matches with the top and bottom edge, then we do L, R prime, L prime, R2, U prime, R prime. Now just a quick note on that last case, it can look pretty confusing depending on how your top center is oriented. So sometimes it'll just look like this where you just have three edges kind of flipped around like this. But you do it in the same way. You look at your bottom color yellow, it's off to the side here. It's on the right in this case, and we ignore this. We look at our front color green. It matches with the two green pieces right here, and so we just do the algorithm for it being on the right. Now you may have noticed after every one of those cases I just showed you, I left the cube looking something like this, with the layer unsolved as well as the tip being unsolved. And this is how you should solve the Pyraminx. You should always leave this tip till the very last move. And that's because there's some more efficient ways to solve it in certain cases. Obviously, if you end up only having the tip messed up or only having a layer messed up like this, you should obviously just solve it with one move. But if you happen to have both the layer and the tip messed up in a way that looks kind of like this, with the same color on the top and the bottom, with just a slice going through the middle, you can kind of hold the cube so that you're holding the whole bottom of the cube with one hand and the tip with the other hand. And then just using one of your fingers like this, you can kind of push the slice like that and solve it in just one move. So that's just a little trick that'll save you a split second. You can decide whether you actually want to do it during your solves. Also, if you do have a weird case like this where it's all three different colors, you can actually solve it kind of in the same way. So you solve this layer like that to the bottom. At the same time, you solve this layer to the bottom. So kind of like this, turning them both different directions. I like doing that sometimes. Now I also promised to show you how to do some beginner layer by layer cases a little bit more efficiently. So let's say we got our V like this and we're inserting our edge into the back, just like this. But now we've accidentally inserted one of our bottom edges and now we've completed a layer. And so now we just have a basic layer by layer case where we have two flipped edges. And so the way I showed you how to do it in the beginner tutorial is you line up the centerpiece, rotate, and then solve it. But it's actually possible and usually much faster to do any beginner layer by layer case from any angle on the puzzle. And so in this particular case where we just have the two flipped edges, instead of turning it like that and then rotating, all we have to do is do the algorithm right here. And then we can finish it off by just doing a U move. Now let's say you're just finishing up your V and you realize that you've solved all three edge pieces instead of just the two. Now that's no problem, you just have to go up here and do a beginner's method case, but instead of lining up the tip and lining up the centerpiece and doing all that first, all you have to do is just look at what case it is. In this case we have red in the front, this on the right, and so we just do our algorithm. Simple as that, and then we can go ahead and solve the tip and the U face at the end. The same thing goes with all the layer by layer cases. We're just finishing up our V, but we accidentally solved all three edge pieces instead of just two. So we look up at the top here, we have the weird case from the beginner's method. And so all we have to do is find the unique one right here, put it in the back, and then do our algorithm. then solve the tip and the last layer. Basically, whenever you get a beginner's method case, you should never have to rotate the puzzle at all. Now here's another weird case. Let's say you finished up your V, you take a look at the edge piece that's in the slot, and it actually is the piece that's supposed to go there, just flipped around. So sometimes when you look at the rest of the cube, there'll just be one other edge piece flipped, and in this case you can just solve everything and do the beginner's method algorithm, kind of like that. Sometimes when you do the same thing, you solve your V and this edge piece right here is flipped, you'll look up at the top here and all the other edge pieces are also flipped. So you have a total of 4 flipped edge pieces, so you can just do that as 2 and 2. And so you do the beginner's method algorithm somewhere on the top here, and now you just have 2 of them left like here, and do the algorithm again. Finally, if you do the same thing still, solve your V, this edge piece right here is flipped, and you just get something that looks really weird like this, or like this. All you want to do is find a spot on the top layer where you have an edge piece matching with a centerpiece next to it like this, so you have red and red right here. Move that over to the front, and then what you want to do is just a sledgehammer. So you don't start with this move, you don't start by breaking it up, you start on the opposite side right here. So you do down, down, up, up, and now you'll see that this piece has become solved. So all you have to do is put that into the back. And now we just have a normal last 3 edge case right here. In this case, we solve it with just a basic slide sledgehammer like this, and then finish it off. Anyway, that is finally it. That is all you need to know about intuitive L4E, plus a couple of other tips for intermediate solvers that I mixed in along the way. I know this video is getting very long, so if you have any other questions, be sure and leave those down in the comments below. I'll try and get back to you. Hope you guys learned something. I'll see you guys next time.